Hey, this is Dr. Kelly Cagle, and for season 3, we're doing things a little differently because we know that a healthy and happy dad and mom starts with a healthy and happy husband and wife. So I decided to bring along my husband, Josh, as co-host so we could share some real life stuff of the ways that we learn how to fight to make our marriage thrive. You are listening to season 3 of the Parenting IQ podcast, Learning to Fight. Hey, Parenting IQ podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kelly Cagle, with my husband, Josh. And today, I don't know if you're not watching on our YouTube channel, you can't see what we wear. But today in particular, Mr. Cagle, Josh over here, has a Lindell Candy Company shirt on. Show off your logo.
That's right. I'm giving them a shout out.
We are.
It's Christmas time.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about expectations. But one of the big things that everybody expects in their stocking is candy, right? And Lindell Candy Company is
canes.
Man, candy canes, chocolates, beautiful things. And if you're local in Texas, the DFW area, which is where we are from, drive down to Lindell. They will not disappoint.
That's right.
So it's actually owned by Josh's brother, Jeremy, and our sister-in-law, Caitlin. And they do a fantastic job with candies. And like you said, candy cane, original recipe from 1946. And so it's a great time. Take your kids over there. Don't tell them what you're getting. I guarantee you will not walk out of the place empty-handed.
It won't disappoint. That's right.
It will not disappoint. But we do want to talk about how to identify expectations today, right? And as Christmas season, if we are in the month of December, everybody's talking about Christmas wish lists and things like that. Of course, the nice or naughty list is a topic of discussion just about every day.
Yeah.
Probably every day of the year, right?
Yeah. No, that's right. It's funny because our kids obviously are super excited, especially our younger two boys. And I'm always telling them that I'm Santa Claus and this, that, and the other. They're like, no, you're not, Dad. I'm like, yeah, I'm Santa Claus. And what's so funny is I told this even to our oldest forever, and he just never would believe me. And then 2 years ago, I think he got me a cup or something that said like Mr. Claus or whatever. And whenever I go to open it, he's like, you really are the real Santa Claus.
He was like, he walked away from his brothers. He's like, that's true, Dad. You really were Santa.
I told him, I was like, well, I told you I'm not going to lie to you. I said, but don't screw it up for your brothers.
You're also Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. But so inside that, though, just the other day, I created a nice list and a naughty list. And so we're teaching Titus, and he's learning to read, and Micah and all that stuff. And so I had him reading this. He's like, nice list, Dad. And you can tell that it takes a second for them to understand what they're reading. And then I showed him the naughty list, and I had Mom, Levi, Titus, and Micah on it. And so once it started registering, they're getting all mad at me and this, that, and the other, because why?
And the expectations, and especially Micah, he like screams, no, Dad, no.
Oh, he was serious. But so inside this, as we're going to go through expectations today, obviously with Christmas time, we all can maybe get into that mode, right? And so we want to identify some of these things and talk about our motives.
Yeah. So I think that even as we were talking about this conversation that we're going to have today, because we always have our first conversation about what the conversation we're going to record is going to be. And I told you that my personality, I don't like to set expectations.
Right.
I don't like to be disappointed. And so a lot of times I don't even want to set expectations, but inside, like internally in my mind, I have expectations. I set them. They're just unspoken.
Right.
So I may not tell you what I expect you to do when you come home, but I expect you to help me cook dinner because, if you've been listening to the episodes, you know that that's not my forte. It is yours. And you have high expectations for the dinner.
Heck yeah. We're going to eat good.
Home. And that just had to be spoken because we just kept fighting over that.
Right.
I had unspoken, you had unspoken expectations about dinner that we just needed to speak them out,
right?
Turn them into spoken expectations. And so I think that whether you acknowledge expectations or not, a lot of times that's kind of what the lead factor is to arguments, to fights, whether that's between you and your spouse, as I just shared, the unspoken expectations we had, or they're with your kids.
Right. And I think what we want to talk about today is when we think about expectations, I think sometimes in my mind it can be, oh, well, those are demands and they're always going to be for your own selfishness.
Right.
And I believe that what we want to cover today is the motives.
Mhm.
So you
Mhm.
can have maybe healthy and unhealthy
Mhm.
expectations, if you want to say that, or basically you can have selfless expectations. And I
Mhm.
think what we want to make sure is, as we go through this Christmas season, is to is to use this time with our kids, with our family, to make sure that we're on the same page.
Mhm.
We were talking about what have our kids done for the Christmas season, and even before Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
they were
Like
already,
November 1st
yeah,
somehow.
developing a list.
Okay. So this was like our school day, right? And we're doing school, and all of a sudden they were like, "Mom, we have something to show you." I'm like, "Okay, great. Show me." So they have their school laptop.
Hmm.
Levi busts it open, our 12-year-old, and he's got like probably 25 tabs. Like the tabs are this big because there's so many little tabs.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay. He goes, so we have our Christmas list ready. I'm like,
of course they do.
what? So we, you and I never set expectations, never discussed the budget with them, never told them how many or how
Well,
much.
Christmas to our minds wasn't even in the picture yet.
We don't really, yeah, no, absolutely not. Well, they decided they took it upon themselves and
Mhm.
found what each of them wanted. And then once I told them, they were like, "Oh, this one adds up to this one adds up to this one, this." And I'm like, well, that's not very even, and we have three kids. They kind of try to, fairness isn't necessarily a real life scenario every day, but we do keep things fair, at least for
You try to
that
keep them
situation.
equal
Yeah.
as best you can.
And so then they were like, okay, let's adjust. Now I need to do this. You need to do this. Like, oh my gosh, the expectation was there. And you know what they're expecting? To get those things
Right.
on all these little tabs that are
Yeah.
open.
No, absolutely. And I think that what we want to talk about today is obviously the joy of Christmas, for especially being a kid. It's hard to teach these things through
Mhm.
this time, but maybe even coming out of Christmas, we can still, in the months of January and February and March, use these opportunities of, hey, you remember that toy that you got back in
Mhm.
December? Because it's so easy to, once you get something, that hype that's happened, it's like,
Mhm.
okay, on to the next thing. And so these are maybe even moments or tokens that we can use for our kids' growth in next year.
Mhm.
Okay. But I've heard some people talk about how in this time, with our kiddos, they're prepping and they'll get out of line and they'll be like, well,
Mhm.
Santa, if you don't do this or this, or if you don't straighten up, I'm going to tell Santa. And what do you see? You see in the month of December, these young kids are acting better than they ever have, right? Because of Santa. So I don't know if Santa is just this amazing, creature that we're able to use to get our
Yeah.
our selfish motives
That goes
through.
back to motives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or if it's just that all of a sudden, they see Santa as some real mean person and
Yeah.
they better get straight, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that going back to just motives in general, and obviously there's the age gap with our kids. Got
Right.
12, 7, and 5. Well, the little ones are still into toys and, like $20 dinosaur little things, whatever. Levi's not there anymore, and he's this preteen, and he has asked for some Oakleys, and Josh jokes with him that he's going to get him Folkleys. and
Heck
he
yeah.
and he's just like, "No, Dad, I asked for two things that add up to the same amount as what the others are getting." And so again, it's this motive of there's a deeper lesson here that we're teaching him. Just because, and even with other things that have come up in his life, with he plays soccer here and time and all these other things, the motive, the deeper lesson, the expectation isn't that you're going to get everything that you want just because you want it.
Right.
You know, there are different lessons that we've got to teach to the 12-year-old, and then different ones that we're teaching to the 7 and then to the 5 as we parent. all three of them under the same umbrella,
Mhm.
same parenting styles, but that we are personalizing this expectation, this
Mhm.
motive, the lesson, the grander, what they're entering into. For example, if you've got, and we talked about this too, his expectation was to get a phone this Christmas.
Right.
We burst that bubble real quick. We're like, you have a phone. You're not getting a smartphone. So, or a 16-year-old and they're expecting to get a car, you know? And
Mhm.
so looking at the family as a whole, the conversations that need to take place about, I know that you're expecting to get, big things this Christmas because we have done big Christmases for the last 5 years. It's a different year, different season for our life, different vision. Maybe you started budgeting. Maybe you had to switch jobs. Maybe you're wanting to take a family trip, whatever it is, that communication to teach your kids about their motivations, their
Mhm.
their whys.
Well, and I love what you said about the communication to teach. And I think even in our marriages, that whenever we are going through some things, we can have, going back to the unspoken or spoken expectations, we can have moments in our minds or in our processes where, we expect each other to do this, or this. And what are we doing? Those motives are selfish. Okay.
Mhm.
When we take somebody for granted or something for granted, that is a selfish mentality. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I think that as we move forward in this Christmas season, we're asking for parents to partner with us and with your kids and with each other, to just really talk about some things in your life. How do you see family? How do you see going through the Christmas season whenever you got to get back with family versus just
Mhm.
having these expectations? Well, you better straighten up, or you better just get through this, or whatever
Mhm.
can happen. I think we want to make sure that expectations are really good. They set a bar. they
Yeah.
set they set a, hey, this is a goal, right?
Mhm.
Goals are good.
Mhm.
And so I think, though, that whenever we are looking at, why do we set that goal? Or what does that goal represent? Does that goal represent something that only benefits you,
Yeah, that's
you
good.
know, or does that goal represent something that can benefit, a relationship?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good. And, the second point that we wanted to make about expectations, the first one was motive. What is your motive? And then the second one that we wanted to talk about is generosity.
Hmm.
So the generosity doesn't really always mean money, right? That's not what it's about. You can be, what are some ways that we can be generous?
Yeah, you can be generous with your time.
Mhm.
You can be generous with your basically space, meaning that, hey, I'm going to allow people to come in
Mhm.
and do life with me, right? You can be generous with love, uh, giving,
Yeah.
obviously, and so I think
Serving.
whenever we talk about that generosity and why would that be something that we want to put inside expectations is number one, when you look to the Lord, He says He expects us to give. His
Mhm.
word says, "Give, and it will be given unto you."
Let me read that verse real quick. So that is Jesus's words in Luke 6:38. And it says, he said, give and you will receive. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured into your lap. The amount you give will determine the amount you get back.
Right. And so what we're basically saying, a thought could be, though, is that giving is measurable. Generosity is a measurable thing, right?
Mhm.
Meaning that we don't have endless money,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
He's called us to give, and so we have to identify what measure can we give, or do we want to give. Sometimes it's sacrificially,
Mhm.
and sometimes you have it. And
Can
the
I
same things with your time. You might not feel like you got tons of time, right? But when you do give some of your time, that could be to spending a moment just slowing down enough to spend time putting the kids to bed
yeah.
versus just, hey, go to bed. I don't have time to lay you down. I got to do this, and this with the laundry or whatever.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, so this is a little kind of like not necessarily in topic, but it kind of relates. So the other day I was watching a reel on Instagram, and I follow Dave Ramsey,
Mhm.
and it was this couple. It didn't sound like they had kids, but people call in all the time to Dave Ramsey to help to get his opinion on getting out of debt, or his whatever, his pursuit of, getting them out of debt. So this lady calls. They both have advanced degrees, her and her husband. She's 29 and he's 32, and they have $1 million worth of debt. And so he's like, Dave Ramsey, he's a straight shooter. I don't know if you've watched his stuff or really listened to him. He is a straight shooter. So he's like, you're here telling me that at 29 years old, you've got $1 million. What's your mortgage? And she said 210,000. And so he's like, so you're telling me that $800,000 is in something else? And she said, well, we both have advanced degrees, and so, oh, how much is in student loans? And she said 300,000. And so then he starts unpacking this, and he goes, well, for the next 3 years, you're not going to be happy because, and so it goes back to this generosity that they just had this idea, and I don't know what they were giving with, but they had thousands of dollars, like hundreds of thousands of dollars credit card debt and all this other stuff, that they lived this life. The motive that they had was a selfish life. I want this, I'm gonna get it, you
Mhm.
know? And even like with a college education, that can be good. Like that's good, but at the same time, what is your motive? Is it gonna pay off? Is it important? Your expectation to live, and I think as we tie this to the financial perspective of Christmas, whether that's with your time you're having to work so hard at overtime to give your kids the Christmas they expect versus you being generous with your time and your presence.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, so many of us, we can get caught up in just these things that we're supposed to do with what culture does, right? The culture expects that out
Right.
of us.
Yeah.
And that culture doesn't give back. It's a taking culture.
Hmm.
And so in this time, as we want to go through and have a beautiful Christmas season, we want to see these kids lit up with joy and excitement. But inside all these things, we want to still create healthy, lifelong learners. And so teaching how to create healthy
Hmm.
expectations, is a character building opportunity. And when we are analyzing our kids' motives, when they're asking for certain gifts, it is a chance that you have to really talk to them about, well, are those needs versus
Right.
wants? Do you understand the impacts of these things financially? Are you doing this because you're wanting to fit in with a crowd? There's so many
Hmm.
opportunities to use these moments to help teach.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah. So with that, we want to make sure that we take advantage of that stuff and celebrate, their lives, but also help them understand that, hey, listen, we're a family unit,
Hmm.
okay,
Hmm.
and we're going to do these things as a family.
Hmm. Well, I think the big thing is what we talk about every week is that communication. Because if all of a sudden you come at your kid, you for the last 15 years, every Christmas they've gotten everything, every birthday they've gotten everything. If they go to the grocery store, they get whatever they want. Like, if that is the constant story in their life, it doesn't mean that you can't, that it's too late to train, that you
Right.
too late, you can, but it's that training. It's just like a dog. You've got to retrain the habits. It's just like us adults.
Hmm.
And just like this couple that I just mentioned, that's what Dave Ramsey was saying. It's a retraining. You're going to have to say no to a whole bunch of stuff. But it takes that mindset of, wow, okay, I have set some high expectations for my kid. And this could even be with your job,
Yeah.
that for years you have gotten this certain thing at, a raise at this time of the year, whatever. And then one year it doesn't happen. Or maybe your expectation is that it's going to be just a wonderful time with family. And then this one year, something tragic happened and there was a divorce, there was a loss or whatever. So, how do you adjust? And that open communication is vital to reestablish some or to realign some expectations.
Hmm. Yeah, I believe in that. And so as our kids and as we look at how can we make sure that our expectations are spoken in goodness, you know, then I think with that we need to make sure that our lives are yeah, the communication piece that our lives are reflected in action. So generosity is an
Mhm.
action.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just something that you talk about, right? So going back to those measurable things, that pressed down, shaken together, running over,
Mhm.
those are measurable goals when we act
Mhm.
upon those decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's good. And I love how that verse ends, what Jesus added after he said all these give, comma, and it'll come back to you. But then at the end it says the amount you give will determine the amount you get back.
Hmm.
And I don't know about you, but I wanna get back. And not again, the motive is not selfish. It's not for me, how good is it gonna be for me? But and I say this all really the simplicity of the gospel, kind of what it boils down to, because they asked Jesus, Jesus, who's gonna be the best, whatever. He said, there are two things that you gotta do. The first one, the greatest thing is to love God. So it was that simple. Love God. And then the second was love your neighbor as yourself. Well, how much do you love yourself?
Hmm.
You love yourself a lot, but love, it boils down to love.
Yeah.
The greatest of these is love. Faithful love. The greatest of these is love. So time and time again, and generosity is rooted. The action that you're talking about is rooted in love.
Yeah.
How loving are you with your finances, with your time, with all the things that you
Right.
talked
It's a
about?
partnership. It's a partnership with yourself, with someone else. You know, I'm deciding to express this generosity. I'm deciding to, you know, partner with healthy motives and set good expectations, you
Hmm.
know. And so speaking of partnerships,
Yeah.
you know, we here with Parenting IQ want to partner and continue partnering with you, parents and families and kids in this life. We are so blessed that you and spend the time using that time with us, and we don't want to take it for granted. We hope that and expect that these things that we are talking about go forth in a very selfless way. We want to see families united closer more now than
Hmm.
ever, and I just believe that there is a war out there against family, and that and really it's spiritual,
Yes.
but it is something that we need to make sure that we're shining light on. And a lot of that has to do with, you know, how can we fight? We know that there's going to be times that we struggle just as much as you're going to have good days.
Hmm.
And I think what we want to make sure is that as we move forward in this season and in this time together, that we just call you guys to action to make sure that you're standing up in your family. And not that we're always perfect, we screw up all the time,
Hmm.
but we are here for you. We want to hear from you, so that we can make sure that we're putting you under prayer and also just doing life with you in very powerful ways, because our hope is that that we're going to see families, marriages revolutionized, not
Yes.
because of us, but because that there is a time and a stirring going on in this world today that is going to unite families together. But it is a choice.
Amen.
It's a choice that we're going to have to make and
Hmm.
take each and every day. And so, as we talk about these things, our hope would be is that they're just little nuggets that would equip you to walk out in your family some practical or maybe just some thoughtful
Hmm.
mentalities that spark up and say, "Hey, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to challenge our family through this Christmas season, for
Yeah.
example, over these expectations." You know, so just
Hmm.
create conversation, because in that there's so many things that can take place.
Hmm. And with that, I do want to say that if you want to partner with us a little further, taking it a step further than just listening, you can also show us your support and your generosity by subscribing to the podcast, by going to our YouTube channel, which is Dr. Kelly Cagle, and you can click that follow button. It's that simple. You guys have no idea what it shows us by just having people following and sharing our work. It's really meaningful because then it tells us, like, it's a visual reminder that what we are doing is impacting your home. That's literally all that means. And it doesn't cost you any money. But for us, it's like, okay, the Lord is moving, the Lord is stirring through this information, and we are impacting families. And so we really do appreciate you sharing about this with your friends, whether it's at Christmas time that you are sharing around the dinner table, showing them the Facebook page, the Instagram page. That those things take a lot of time and a lot of effort. We don't take it lightly. And everything is prayerfully considered and recorded. There's so much prayer that goes behind the content. We pray every single time before we hit the record button here. It's again not for our own gain, but our expectation is that the Lord has given us a mission, and we are walking out by loving Him and honoring Him, and then loving you guys and the community of parents around our community. And so we appreciate your support. We hope that this conversation of expectations helped you a little bit to have conversations. That's all it takes. Have conversations about your motives and also how generous you and your family will be this Christmas season. We love you guys. We'll see you next week.